Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to our Travel Matters webinar series with Discover Core. I'm going to give everyone a second here to pull in and get sorted. I'm also going to get myself ready here with my coffee. Anyone need a beverage of choice this morning? We'll just give everyone about 2 to 3 minutes to get seated while we get set up here as well. Welcome, Adam, to Travel Matters. Super excited to have you today. Where are you tuning in from?
I'm here in Ontario, Canada, with some fresh dusting of snow over the last couple of days. So we're heading into winter earlier than we expected.
Yeah, seriously. So, for fun fact for everyone, I'm actually originally from Canada. We'll introduce ourselves more formally in a second here, but I haven't been back to Canada like with snow for about 5 years. So, I'm actually here visiting before I head to South Africa with my team. I'll be meeting up with everyone as of Sunday. And so it's just a kind of a cool treat for me to be in Canada during the snow. I was telling Adam before this, I'm learning to love it again and embrace it for the small time. But living in Costa Rica full time means I don't get to experience the snow like I used to growing up. So nice to nice to see it. Did you shovel this morning, Adam?
And we didn't, well, it was strange because it's kind of a combination this year of leaves and snow. I don't remember having that. So it was more cleaning up the frozen leaves all over the place that, are just going
Yeah.
to add to the mess if you don't deal with them now.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
gonna make a big mess.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's funny because it really what we weren't expecting it, I swear, like this early in the year.
No, not at all. But I like it. My kids were already out on the small hill we have here. Just already strapped their skis on, trying to get ready for the winter because you said it right about embracing. If you're living here, you got to embrace the winter.
Yeah, I honestly don't know if I did growing up as much as when I was back home during the pandemic in 2020. I got sent home from my work in Costa Rica, and I took up cross country skiing with my family, and it made me like learn to love the winter again. I was like excited every t time it snowed. I was like ready to get out and almost
Yeah.
waiting for it to come. Yeah, you
Yes,
have to embrace it.
for sure.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to get started here. Thank you to everyone for joining. I'm your host, Lynn, as mentioned, and I'm excited to welcome back another episode of Travel Matters. This is our fairly newer series, a monthly webinar series where we explore where meaningful travel has the power to shape lives, learning, and the world around us. And today we're actually focusing on I want to say experiential education. I'm actually thrilled to introduce somebody who has had a major impact on my own life and journey. This is Adam Kasper, environmental educator, lifelong explorer, and global sustainability advocate. Adam actually taught me back in high school in Canada. I had the pleasure of taking a couple of courses with Adam, such as Indigenous Studies, Travel and Tourism, Environmental Science. All of those classes struck me in a really huge way. And I recently went back to Eastwood, and it's just so funny how I remember Adam's travel stories more than some of my other subjects in high school. I think those just were unforgettable and have shaped, what I knew life was possible and the kinds of journeys that I could achieve. And of course, I came into meeting Adam with a little bit of my own travel history already, and that sort of inspiration to be abroad. I won a trip at 13 to India, and when I met Adam, I was on my way to Ghana. We have some fun photos here in a second, but Adam has traveled to nearly 70 countries, bringing stories from around the world into the classroom and really showing how hands-on experiences can spark curiosity. So, Adam, thank you so much for being here. Super excited. I really enjoyed having the chance to look through some of the photos, which I'll get to in a second. for anyone who this is your first time learning about Discover Core, I always like to quickly introduce who we are as well. We are a vacation with purpose company that tries to really inspire people to care about our natural wonders of the world, cultural treasures, and local communities. We try to advocate for a type of travel that really connects people and creates, unforgettable memories together as a family. And like I mentioned, those travel stories I heard from you, Adam, are exact representation of this. So um, please tell us, who you are and a little bit about your story.
All right, yeah. So, hello, I'm Adam. I love the photo that we threw in there because, well, first of all, I don't know if anybody knows. I'm going to test Lynn here. Do you know what city that photo would have been taken in? I'm going to
Oh,
put you to the
no.
test.
No, probably not. No.
Yes. So I discovered this when I was traveling there. That's Amsterdam.
Oh,
Um, and so I share the name of a city. I found that, discovered that, and one of my favorite cities now that I visited it a couple times. But I'm pointing to that photo today because there's not very few times you'll see me with facial hair. It's either at the end of a big adventure when I was packing light, or during Movember. So you're catching me in Movember here, just like in the photo. That "Hello, I'm Adam" was right after a big journey we went on. But yeah, so I grew up in Southern Ontario, and I started to but my starting of travel was really because of my dad, who was actually a long haul truck driver, and he would do these long runs down to the United States, and he often it's totally I'm sure it was illegal then, but probably even more so now. But he would sneak me into the back of the sleeper part of his truck, and I go along with him on these long runs down to the southern U.S. and he always put me in charge of navigating, and that is, when my love of maps really started. And when when my dad wasn't driving a truck, he just still loved to drive, and we would drive on trips down to Florida, out west in Canada. And I was just that proud navigator as a young kid. And I fell in love with just staring at maps, and I planned out all of our stops and things that we would see along the way, and all the milestones and all of that. And that was kind of my beginnings of wanting to wander and look at, and see this world. And it really was that beginning of just being a navigator and looking at maps. And still to like this day, I get lost just looking at maps. And I actually love doing that with students in my classroom. We just kind of stare at maps and imagine what places actually look like when if you were there in person. And I've actually since met lots of other travelers that also have this same affection with maps, and have that same curiosity. And so, yeah, I'll say curiosity is that root of discovery that drives exploration. And my curiosity of maps over the past 40 years have led me to travel extensively around the world, with a focus on sustainable tourism,
Mhm.
ecotourism, adventure tourism, wilderness tourism. And I worked as a freelance photographer, or continue to work as a freelance photographer when I find the time for that too. I've visited over almost 70 countries now to date. I'm one shy of 70, so that's
Okay, okay, we're just one of, yeah, you get it almost.
yes. Um, and much of this travel is really has included, being outdoors with hiking and cycling and paddling a canoe through the wilderness.
Yeah,
And
always very
it really,
active.
yeah. And I started traveling kind of independently. In '98, I traveled independently, hiking my way through Europe, finding any route I could to just discover the amazing mountains that were there. And then that next year in university, I met a kindred spirit who eventually became my wife, and
Mm.
she also had the wanderlust, and our combined love of travel brought us all over the world together. And then, of course, with our kids later too. When we did have kids, we actually took some semesters off to road school them.
Mhm.
Um, we luckily had the ability to do that and just take an unpaid leave from work. We're both teachers, and decided we wanted to take time to actually teach our own kids through those really developmental years, and did two separate trips, one through Central America, where we volunteered on organic farms, and we collaborated with a lot of local tour operators and guest houses to promote sustainable travel. Actually, within Costa Rica, a
Yes,
few
I
places
remember.
around there as well.
Mhm.
And the second was traveling through North America, visiting pretty much. and any national park we could. It's like an addiction, trying to visit national parks, and my kids are on it too. And the parks actually do an amazing job of, I find, especially in the United States, they do a great job of hooking in kids through these junior ranger programs. And so
Mm,
my kids started to become a part of the planning process, just like I did with my dad, and they started planning these trips
mm.
and routes that we would hit as many national parks as possible. And we lived in a camper van in both of those trips. So that was just an amazing experience to look back on. And then we followed this up now that our kids are getting older, they're teenagers now. We've started to figure out ways that we can be active when we travel and things that would challenge us. And so we followed up our all these road schooling trips with our first cycling adventure through Climate Ride, another company, and did a 6-day circuit through Montana's Glacier National Park and Canada's Waterton Lakes National Park. And there's a photo actually at the top there. That's of us at Waterton Lakes National Park there.
Wow.
And then yeah, and that was our first sort of taste of adventure active travel where I mean you got to pedal your way to your next destination and doing it as a family really was we were the only family actually on that trip and
Oh, wow.
they my boys inspired others including myself because going over those mountains they were ahead of us all the time so
They
uh,
were, yeah. You were
they're
like, "Wait a
amazing.
second.
Yes
I'm
and
supposed to
that
be leading you."
exactly, yeah, and I think that was, that's that I mean, one of our motivations, our boys just have so much energy, we're like, "Let's just do this," and then we're in
Yeah,
the
we
middle,
can
and
do
we're
it.
like, "Okay, we can do this," and, the biggest challenge actually is feeding them, uh, on these adventures, but,
I bet.
yeah,
Oh,
if you go to the next photo,
yep,
our next, photo
we're
here,
this
or
one?
I guess we'll go
We'll
back
come
to
back, yeah.
come
This
back to
one?
that one.
Yeah, right?
Next one after that, I think there's a couple right there.
Okay.
The one with the us cycling. That's our most,
Oh, this one, no,
yeah,
sorry.
that one there.
Yeah,
That's our
okay.
most recent cycling adventure that we did just over a year ago, and we independently cycled the Rhine River from its source up in the Swiss Alps in the town of Andermatt, and then we followed it, cycling routes all the way down 17 days of bike packing and camping to the North Sea in the Netherlands, and it was that opened up a whole new sort of world and possibilities of active adventure travel and we're really hooked on this now and just trying to figure out what's next and we really do love the pace of travel on bikes. It allows you to kind of immerse yourself more into places you're traveling through. It keeps
Mhm.
you active in shape and helps
Yep.
you like work off all the amazing local food that you eat as well.
Yes, along the
And
way.
yeah, and it's just an amazing way for a family to kind of work together, achieve a goal together, encourage each other. I mean, there's, as I said, lots of challenges. One of them just physically feeding the boys and ourselves. But there's some tough days if it's raining or tough to kind of muster up the energy to say we have to cycle 110 kilometers and pull a tent and all those different things. But that's what brings us together and really makes us love continuing to travel with this adventure mindset and active side. Well, yeah,
Well,
that's a little bit about myself.
I know it's so inspiring because I mean, I got to hear about all of your travel stories as like this solo traveler from meeting, Shannon and now your family and just that ability to like to not stop, a lot of people I think have this fear of like, oh, well, when my kids, I don't know when I can travel or at what age. But I feel like you just fully embrace the like what I would want to do with my life. My kids are going to do it with me, and through that they'll find their own love. And seeing your boys recently, you can tell I'm like, oh my gosh, who knows what their like bucket list trip is going to be now that they have all of these like
Yeah,
history already. I'm like,
yeah,
it's just amazing and so inspirational because it's yeah, not every day you meet a family like your guys's that are doing these crazy adventures and advocating for, again, our world and
yeah.
yeah.
I actually, I'll just add. I remember actually a bit of a challenge. I remember when we had our first Xavier, our first child, and somebody, I think it was a staff member, said, "Oh, I guess that's the end of all your travels." As soon as we had a child, and it was almost like challenge accepted, right?
Yeah, you were like, no, actually, you don't know me at all. You
Yeah,
clearly don't know, or my wife, because I mean, I have this memory. You guys did tree planting even together as a
Yes,
couple. Like you guys lived in Australia for a
yes,
long time doing your masters, right, in sustainable
yes.
tourism. And but your tree planting stories even was it in northern Canada that you guys lived
Yeah,
with?
in northern BC. Yeah, that was our
Northern
first,
BC.
Shannon and I's first summer together. We knew we
Yes.
were meant to be after making it through that.
Yeah, I remember you said like she saw a bear running at her and she just got her shovel ready and was ready to defend, you and the whole crew. Like she
Yes,
was.
but that was when I was like, "Oh yeah, I wanna marry her."
Yeah,
It
yeah,
wasn't
I remember.
screaming or running, it was grip the shovel and prepare,
And
right?
be prepared. Yes, real mama bear energy as well.
That's
Yeah.
right.
No, it's so cool. And so for everyone, I briefly introduce, how I know Adam, but a little bit more context. So I won this trip to India when I was 13, and I went on a volunteer, experience that changed the trajectory of my life and how I thought about the world and what I knew was possible. That following summer after India, I fundraised to go to Kenya where I started fundraising for like an all-girls school there. You can see this sign. It says "Support the Mamas," Rafiki chains. I was selling bracelets and but at this point, I was actually at a different high school, and I moved high schools for Eastwood is a really unique school. Focuses, I mean, Adam could tell better, but focuses on the arts and having an arts program. It also has an ESL program, like an English as a second language. It has even we have people like refugees that come to be reintegrated. So we just have such a diverse school and crowd. And I really wanted to go here, but my mom was like, no way. It's a long drive. I lived in small town Ontario to get to the bigger city, which is Kitchener here. She was like, you're gonna have to commute like an hour each way. That's 2 hours a day. But eventually she let me convince her. And when I got to my first assembly ever, I heard Adam talking about Spencer West, who you can see here. He is the gentleman without legs. And he was somebody I met through my trips who was fundraising for clean water in Kenya, and he was going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro to do it. And before that, he was going on a trip to Ghana and I was going to join him. And so I had already known that I was going to Ghana with Spencer West when I met Adam. And he told me that he was having Spencer West come and speak as a motivational speaker at our school. So it was kind of like stars aligned. Immediately, I met Adam this day, and he became my best friend and confidant. We did a lot of things together in my years at Eastwood, and these are a couple of photos um, of our, fundraising and
Yeah.
events. I don't remember. This one was for, do you
This one
remember?
was, that was, so a lot of this work through, of course, our, social justice club and environmental club impact, but this was a water walk where we did something unique in that a lot of schools were doing this idea of a water walk where in some countries mainly women have to carry water many kilometers for them, and we wanted to of course teach empathy for that, but we thought, why would we carry water in a country that has a lot of water in terms of Canada? We should carry food because that's something that is of great need in our community. So we ended up doing a water walk through Kitchener, carrying
Mhm.
donated food
Mhm.
that was at our school, and that's us delivering the food. So yeah, looking at these photos yesterday when I was digging them up, I just brought me back to these years when we really achieved so much together. And there's so many great global leaders in these photos, including yourself. That
Mhm.
are out trying to change the world. So it's just amazing to reflect on these.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that leads into my next question for you, which is because, I mean, what inspired you to be a teacher in the first place? Like, what was that moment for you where you decided like this is the path? Kind of what unfolded to make it your, you've been at Eastwood for a long time, but I know you had some journeys before then as well.
Yeah, yeah. So it didn't. It's a bit of a long story that I'll share with you in terms of like how this happened. Really, it really started again because of maps, and my love of maps led me to loving geography. I actually remember myself as a student in grade 8 geography, and the teacher asked a question. I actually remember it like it was yesterday. Like it's very strange how certain memories stick with you, but he asked the class where the Galapagos Islands were, and I was so keen. I stood up and I was like, I know where that is, and I got up and I pointed it out on a map, and the class was amazed I knew this. The teacher was like, "How did you know where that was?" And I was like, "Well, that's a place that I've dreamed of going because it's filled with unique species that have evolved because of its extreme isolation." And I came to realize I was maybe one of the only 13-year-olds in that room that would think that. And the teacher was kind of set that made me realize that was something unique within me, that I had this love of the world that we live in and wanting to see, particularly nature and animals. I love wildlife still to this day. Love photographing wildlife, but that teacher really inspired me uh, by finding that in me, and that started me on a path. In high school, I took many geography classes, and then after high school, I went to University of Waterloo, studied environmental studies with a geography focus, and then I continued my education in Australia and completed a master's of tourism with a focus on ecotourism in national parks. It seemed like a perfect place to study for 2 years. You can see from these photos, actually, my time was spent working in a lot of national parks, and the one on the right there is the vehicle that we purchased. It was a 1989 Ford Falcon station wagon, and we converted that into basically like a camper wagon,
Yeah.
to travel across Australia. We were just students with not a lot of money, and tried to
Mhm.
find the cheapest way to go and see as many places as possible. And it was Australia has hundreds of national parks, which are
Mhm.
just incredible. So we visited as many as we possibly could. There's a photo there of me at Royal National Park. We hiked through Fraser Island, did the overland track in Tasmania, through the heart of Tasmania. The parks that really stuck with me were the ones in the central part of Australia, of course, Uluru, Katajuda, and the Red Centre. It's known as
Mm.
Ayers Rock, and to the Anangu people. Carnarvon Gorge in Queensland, Kakadu National Park in the Northern Territory. They all have like so much rich indigenous culture and history that just stuck with me at those times, and provided me with this appreciation of these cultures that have existed for 50,000 plus years. And these parks preserve so much of their art and history that just to me was like can't even imagine to see paintings on rock that are 2,000 years old, right? Like
Mhm.
just incredible. So to your question there about what inspired me to become a teacher, particularly of like indigenous studies and environmental studies, well, I think there's a real intersection between those two things, and national parks are really there to preserve these incredible natural features, but the cultural history shows that these
Mhm.
people for millennia have wanted to protect these places first,
Right.
before the first idea of a park through a government was set up, right? And they've lived on these
Absolutely.
lands for thousands of years, protected these places as being such sacred places. And on a side note, I really believe that national parks are such a opportunity for reconciliation between indigenous cultures and, of course, governments of those nations to help work together to managing these beautiful places,
Right.
cataloging the history, but also educating the public today about indigenous knowledge and ways of being more sustainable. And we're starting to see that actually in many parks. And it started, I think,
That
in Uluru.
integration.
Yeah, that
Mhm. Mhm.
integration started actually at Uluru. I think the year is 1985 when they started co-managing that park, and now many parks around the world are looking at this model. So I really think that's that partnership that would really help us reconcile moving into the future generations. But back to your question, though, in terms of becoming a teacher, it wasn't initially on my radar. I was just loving traveling at this stage of my life. My 20s was just filled with traveling and experiencing the world and just soaking it as much as I possibly could. And I actually worked as a tour guide for a while. I think if you go to the next photo,
Yeah.
that's me. I did a course in South Africa on becoming a safari guide, and that it was kind of a month-long course. I had to take an exam at the end, and this was in the early 2000s, and that was really my life's path. I was like, I want to be a tour guide and
Mhm.
and work as that, and then we were living in Canada. Actually, after that, we came home to Canada. I worked as a tour guide for 2 years for Great Canadian Holidays, which was focused mostly on senior tours.
Mhm.
And then my wife was hired by the Canadian International School in Singapore in 2004, and she was hired there, and I was going to also become a tour guide in Singapore. And I was really looking forward to those opportunities of the destinations being based in a country like Singapore. Uh,
Mhm.
but life, sometimes things happen, and there was a medical emergency at the school at the very beginning of the school year, and the geography teacher needed someone to cover the class. So that started up with covering class for a day. That turned into a week, and that turned into 2 years.
Oh my
And
God,
I
I
kind of just
forgot that.
yeah, kind of just accidentally became a teacher. Um, and they needed someone that knew something about geography, and I've
You're
really
like, I might know some things.
yeah, and it just kind of, like you said, though, sometimes things just happen for a reason. And
Mhm.
I fell in love with teaching at this point, and I've been teaching ever since. Where I love just working with youth every day, inspiring them to look at the world with awe and wonder, and it's what gets me out of bed in the morning. It's kind of like being a tour guide, actually, being a
You
teacher.
are, you're touring us through life and making sure we try to learn how to find ourselves, but also find the world and make sure we're not forgetting that there's a world
Yeah,
outside of our high school walls as well,
yeah,
and,
that's
reminding
right.
us that we have support and you're
Yeah,
definitely helping assist us go through life, that's for
yeah,
sure.
yes,
Oh, yes. And we know that, I mean, travel, right? It it can have the power of transformation, like for our minds, for the communities that, they're engaging with travel. But what would you say is the big difference between like teaching about the world and actually teaching through the world, when it comes to being in the classroom and trying to, educate your students about the way that you see the world?
yeah. I like this question about this, because it really is kind of looks a lot at, you know how do you nurture curiosity? Because that's really what
Hmm.
this is all about. Is I talked about me being curious, but through by just looking at maps, and that's all rooted in that curiosity. And to travel is to be curious about the world and wanting to experience that firsthand. And I always do this. I know it's like a lot of people kind of they'll remember the book, but of course, The Outsiders, the famous quote, "Stay gold, pony boy." That "stay gold" just is always stuck with me, about being present and to find joy in the moment despite challenges that we face. And
Hmm.
traveling the world has provided me with countless stay gold moments that really have shaped me. And I use these moments to share and hopefully inspire students to be curious themselves, be lifelong learners, and as well just find that same mindset about being present in the moment. So, teaching, using my experiences and bringing that to the students, I think is what brings me some success in the classroom. And
Hmm.
I always have to be, I think it's important to point out, try to be careful that not make it all about all of these things that I've done and traveled. It can seem a bit of like you're showing off. And I think what I'm trying to say is like, for myself, I'm a great example for many students to look at the dreams that they potentially have. So like I came from very
Hmm.
humble beginnings with my family. My family was filled with love and support, but ultimately we know travel is a luxury that
Hmm.
as a young I only did it on very rare occasions as a
Hmm.
young child, and
Absolutely.
as a teenager, and it's a real luxury. And but it's something that became important to me. I loved doing it, and it became the priority of my life that I had to rely on others to ensure I could make that work financially. I didn't
Hmm.
own a car until I was much older. And then the first car I did own, I lived in it, right? So it was
Yeah, yeah.
both a home
There were
and
some sacrifices, there were some trade-offs. Yes.
that's right. And when I was in Canada, anytime I was in Canada, I lived at home with family to save money to be able to travel, right? And I think
Right.
beyond teaching geography, my wife and I both teach to inspire youth to really set goals to achieve their dreams. And we
Mm.
have in both our classrooms creating a list for life, or a bucket list activity. Um, it's not something that's in the curriculum, but it's a focus really in our classes because it's, this list could be a something that, or places they might want to travel to. Maybe it's
Mhm.
fears that they have that are holding them back, testing their limits, shedding their inhibitions. So as an educator, I really feel like my life of traveling is an example for them to look at as someone that embraces those opportunities to find purpose in their life through something that they love. And in
Right.
this case, being the world that we live in.
Yeah. And it's amazing because teachers, so when I think back to my trip that I won to India, and it resonates with me in the same way. My mom was a single parent, 4 kids. I'm the youngest of four. So even like I mentioned, skiing and things, they were expensive activities that as a family we didn't do. So it wasn't until my adulthood that I could like purchase those things, to be able to do it. But it was a teacher that came to my mom to tell her that I should apply for this trip to India. And my mom was like, I'm not gonna let my 13-year-old go to India for a summer. Like, no. But that teacher convinced her. And it's funny, that teacher also recently reached out to me after many, many years and was like, I'm going to Guatemala or Peru, and I'm not sure where I'm going to be placed, but she's like, I immediately thought of you, Lynn, and watching you go through that as a youth still to this day has inspired me, and now I'm finally getting to live out my dream. But it was so crazy to me to think that a teacher was able to like change my mom's fundamental views about what this could provide for me and my future and where it could launch me. And I'm just so grateful that there's these teachers that are planted for kids around the world, because I know good teachers exist everywhere like you, that get to be that assistant in, our journeys and inspiring us to not let our fears, like you said, kind of limit us, or, some limitations we do have and they're very real. Others are ones we put upon ourselves and we kind of have to work through that. So yeah, and I also know right now, every time I go home and I'm chatting with teachers like you, Adam, you mentioned screens and just this idea that, technology right now is dominating the classroom in many ways. I really feel it since the pandemic, like in speaking with you, and other educators. And I know it's not just in Canada, but I can tell it's something you're all grappling with. And what's interesting is when I've spent time in places like Cuba, where technology is just not so integrated into everyday life, there's a different kind of connection that you can build with people there. Like I always chat about my first trip to Cuba, which was my first day on the job with Discover Core. And it opened my eyes to a different way of living, the way that people kind of reminded me to live in the moment. Even though I feel like I have learned these lessons, sometimes you have to relearn them again and be reminded that, technology is not everything. And um, connection matters and how to do that. But from your perspective, what is this digital shift looking like, in practice? How do you see it influencing students right now, and in their ability to connect with the quote unquote real world around them?
Yeah, this is, I think it's on all of our minds in so many ways because we're witnessing such a major shift in our world, and the screens are at the center of it. Like as I just reflect on, my teaching career, and if I were to walk down the hall when I started teaching 20 years ago to today, what kids are doing, it's of course, I look down the hall and everyone's staring at a screen. And, this is because we really are in the midst of this, I guess they call it the fourth industrial revolution, and it's causing these major disruptions to all industries. And education is, of course, not immune to this. And we're, as educators, we're really struggling how to adapt to this. I think institutions
Mhm.
struggle with how to adapt to this rapid change. And it just feels right now that things are a little bit out of whack in our schools on maintaining kind of engagement. The screens are taking the attention of students in so many different ways. Girls in some way, boys in other ways. Like we're competing with these systems that are so good at engaging students, and we have to kind of reinvent
For
what
their
we're doing.
attention. Yeah.
Yeah, it's challenging, let's just say, but we can think about in some ways like the digital transformation's been amazing. I can now take students on virtual tours of pretty much most cities of the world, most tourist sites, and just like, let's
True.
go check out this through Google Earth or virtual
Yeah,
vacation.
we can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, like, so amazing, but then on the other hand, it's all these other things that are being brought into our society, and our youth are at the heart of it, and the grip and hold that social media is having on students is, I'll be honest, that in many ways it's a nightmare,
Mhm.
days that it's you think you're waking up in some sort of nightmare, and
Mhm.
it saddens me on a regular basis to see it play out, in person. Not to just to kind of be honest with you about it, right?
Mhm.
And I think teachers and parents are really feeling this at the moment, and I'm struggling to be like, am I old? Is this because I'm older?
Right.
And is it because I don't get what this is? And probably parts of that, but I also have a lot of empathy for students and children growing up in this world. Being a teenager today means you're forced pretty much to be on social media if you want to be in the know of what's going on and to be
Right.
accepted. Um, Gone are the days I look at my childhood where we just said after we got off the bus or whatever, like, let's meet over at the park and we're going to play some baseball, or we're going to do this, or we're going to go explore. Just
Yeah.
kind of word of mouth, we gathered and explored and played outside together. And, you see kind of less and less of this socialization in person. And so I think our educational our institutions need to evolve to start to meet the needs of these students and prepare them for the future of whatever this future is going to look like. And it's a real monumental task. And you mentioned the pandemic, like we're already very overwhelmed by adapting to the pandemic and shifting how we taught and the
Right.
teaching online.
Online.
And now
Yeah.
you add this in and it's like, oh, you got to change everything that you're doing.
Yeah, and
It's
AI
a lot.
is just a new, really big change that everyone's having access to, and I don't think we have come to a place where we really know how to utilize it in the best ways,
Yeah,
and because we know that it has power to, to be great, but it also has power to not be great. So
yeah,
we need to figure out how to use it, and I feel for you all because it feels overwhelming at the thought of how do
yeah,
we move forward.
yes.
But I know you
Oh,
said, the school, you have kind of strategies, and
yeah.
some of those are
So
maybe
kind of
getting students outside doing other things,
for
right?
sure, yeah, to your point, kind of like of traveling to places without technology, I think about that in Cuba, you said, but I recently read a quote by the most recent Nobel Prize in economics, Peter Howitt, Canadian, working in a Western university here. He stated that this reorientation of education is going to be important to emphasize skills in like teamwork and
Mhm.
leadership and empathy and cooperation. That's what our learners need to be. Those are the things our learners need to be doing to be able to be successful in whatever work environment they're going to be in. And I think shifting our focus from that traditional knowledge-based lessons to gaining these skills by working together is a way. So we're starting to do this at Eastwood. Actually, tomorrow we have a full tree planting day at our school. That was a student-led project from our grade 9 geography class. A student was like, realized we need more trees around our neighborhood and applied for some grants through their geography project and received $6,000 to plant 35 trees in the neighborhood. So now we have a bunch of classes outside tomorrow, even though it's cold, but they're going to get to plant some trees. And they've worked through this, and I think that's the example that we have to move towards, is this sort of experiential project based learning, getting outside more. And that's the direction we're moving in, because I think that will meet the needs of these students, for the future.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because it's often the landscapes that you go to visit in a place will resonate with you, but it's also the connection with the people and like building that together. So I loved what you said about the national parks and that opportunity of reconciliation between, indigenous people, but also celebrating some of the most beautiful parts of our world that we have and making sure that they stay that way.
Mm.
But it's an important reminder that we have to like get out. And I feel like screens often make us feel like we have to stay inward or we have to kind of focus on ourselves. And it's just so important to kind of like break away from that and remind ourselves that there is, a bigger world around us. And when you travel, you're just reminded just how amazing local people are, and that ability to connect is it's not hard, when you actually put yourself out there a little bit, you can really find amazing people around the way. And I want to ask you one of your specific, stories. I know you have so many, but I did ask you if you could share a specific
Yeah.
story from your travels that shaped you as a teacher. I know you have lots, but excited to hear what you want to
Yeah.
share with us today.
Well, if you can, yeah, share this photo. I'll get to this, but this photo has a whole. When I think about a moment that really changed my perspective as a teacher, it was really here. And this is in Rwanda. And in 2006, I found myself, meeting one of my lifelong dreams of observing wild gorillas in their natural habitat. And this was started again as a child. My family often brought me to the Toronto Zoo. My uncle lived close to it. And I remember always being in awe of the gorilla exhibit and seeing the gorillas. I just would just like observe them for most of my visit there. I just thought they were so fascinating, and I wanted to learn as much as I could as a young child. And I looked at National Geographic, of course, that was the best place, and read the stories and reports by Diane Fossey, and watched the documentaries they would have on Sunday nights on television with my grandparents about mountain gorillas. And it was my grade 11 teacher that actually helped me create a bucket list. And at the top of that list was traveling to Africa to see endangered gorillas in the wild. And in 2006, I found myself, achieving that dream on one of our kind of around the world trips that we went there. And we were lucky enough to visit the Susa group, which is the one Diane Fossey actually studied when she was studying gorillas in Rwanda. But this experience today still takes my breath away, to having been in the presence of these incredible animals. And I even had a very close encounter with Titus, the largest male silverback in the group, who took an interest in me because he noticed I had this tripod with me. And he's, of course, a protector of his group, and was curious
Like, what is that?
why this person was carrying this tripod in the wilderness like this. There was literally nowhere to put a tripod down. I don't know what I was thinking, but he was making sure it wasn't something that could hurt the other gorillas, and came up. The 600-pound gorilla came right up to me, inspected the tripod, and you can imagine what I almost fainted with fear when the 600-pound gorilla was face to face with me. But he
Oh
just
my God, Adam.
just took a look at the tripod and carried on. And but
Wow.
that experience itself, I say, is one that will live with me forever. But it was actually something that happened after, and that's where this photo is taken of. That really changed my perspective. And we came down from Virunga National Park, and we were hiking out, and we came across this soldier. There's actually a whole line of soldiers along these rocks. And we walked over this embankment, and I asked the guide, what's happening here? This doesn't seem like a safe place. And he said, "Oh, this is kind of there's a conflict, of course, still going on from the 90s, when the country experienced the horrific genocide." And he said, "This conflict still goes on to this day." But and I was like, "Well, why are we in the middle of it?" And he says, "Well, you're a rich white tourist, and nothing's going to happen to you, because the amount of money that gorilla tourism brings into the region, they just make sure nothing will happen to you." And I remember that really hit me a lot, and it actually hit me more the more I think about it, even to this day. That
Mhm.
comment, it just strikes me as all about privileges and freedoms, right? And here I'm an apparently rich tourist. To me, I'm not rich. I paid $350 to enter the park that day, but 350 US dollars, as we know,
Mhm.
in a country like Rwanda at that time, is considered to be something in a 1 day experience to spend, right?
Right.
Um, so this really hit me with that idea of privilege and freedoms. And today is, of course, Remembrance Day in Canada, and I think a lot about and reflect on those freedoms that we have. My grandfather fought in World War II and
Mhm.
fought for the freedom of the Allied nations, and I take that lesson looking at this as the freedom to travel
Right.
is something that we maybe
Take
sometimes
for
don't
granted.
realize, take for granted.
Mhm.
Yes, like during COVID, it kind of when they said,
Reminded us for a
right,
moment.
right,
Yeah, that
yes,
we don't actually have to do this. We
yes,
can stay home and not travel, but yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
And I think the lesson I take, because travel is such a freedom, for us, and a privilege, or it's a privilege, that's a freedom that we enjoy. That like all freedom comes with responsibility, and as a
Right.
traveler you have a responsibility to be conscious of your impacts and the choices you make to ensure that they're sustainable ones, to ensure the freedoms for future tourists, right? um,
Right.
I think that photo there kind of encapsulates a lesson that still to this day resonates with me. And there's another wild side to the story, and I couldn't dig up the exact photo. Well, I could probably find it, but I also don't have permission from the person to share it. But
Okay.
another
Tell me.
wild side of this story is when I was sharing these photos in my class. This was my first year at Eastwood. I was sharing these stories of me being in Rwanda, and there was a girl in my class, and I'm going through the photos, that recognized her aunt in one of the photos.
No way.
Yes, and the photo was taken in the border town of Goma, which is with the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and the student had left as a refugee shortly after because there was a volcanic eruption that caused this mass displacement of people in an area that was already stretched as a result of the conflict in the 90s. And
Wow.
this again is such a lesson in privilege, that here I am teaching this lesson, and here's a girl whose aunt
In
is
the
in a photo
classroom.
that right, like just how small the world is as well, right? Just wild.
Wow, that is wild.
Yeah.
That is another add to the story that just seriously, you can't make that stuff up. It's just too
Yes.
serendipitous where you're like, wow.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's so true. We really do, I think, take uh, advantage of this privilege and forget sometimes. In our last travel webinars or Travel Matters series, we had our original founder, Andrew Motiwala, who was just talking about also what we've been chatting, like it's a huge industry. There's a lot of money that goes towards tourism. And he said, think of it like a hose where just the hose is running and everyone's going towards large scale tourism. The resorts, the cruises, most people are staying in the hubs, the city hubs. Not a lot of people are spreading that wealth and opportunity. And it's our job to kind of like make that hose be spread out,
Mhm.
like share the wealth
Yes.
and try to find, some of the places on the outskirts that are not getting that attention, but are actually contributing to a more regenerative way of travel that we're, making healthier food systems, preserving culture and heritage, and making sure that we're engaging in tourism that's locally owned and supports local guides and being able to support them because otherwise it can be just a lot going towards another kind of tourism that's not as responsible and can have adverse effects. Some of our most beautiful places can get changed as a result, and it is our job to kind of know that and know where to put our money and dollars so that we can make a positive impact together. It
Yeah,
takes a village, though. It can't, we really do need to make it a movement. Um, I have so many other questions I want to ask you, but I do want to open it up in for the audience in case they have any. So I think I'll end with just what advice would you give people considering travel as an investment on their ongoing education?
exactly. Yes, I would say this. I remember another story. You talk about stories. I think storytelling is a wonderful way of teaching as well,
Mhm.
and of learning. And this story quickly about this is when I first started teaching um, at Eastwood. Actually, I decided to finish off my senior level geography course with a lesson on gap years and the value that they can provide for students. And a couple days later, I got an email from one of our guidance counselors who was contacted by a parent that had concerns that I was putting these ideas in their kids' heads to take a year off to travel. And at first, I was kind of shocked by this. And as a young teacher, I was like kind of a little worried that maybe I crossed some sort of line. And by doing this, and after reflecting, I realized something, that I was actually never exposed to doing a gap year myself in Canada. And I really only stumbled upon this concept of doing some sort of gap year or travel experience when living in Australia, where they're much more acceptable in Australia, and it's really a rite of passage. And that's also many European nations are like that as well. And that just at the time that I was delivering that was not a lesson that was being offered in North America. And we could do a whole other podcast just like unpacking this. But when I look back to my interview to be a teacher, I can without a doubt say that what set me apart from other candidates was my travel experience and living abroad. Um,
Hmm.
I think they look at that. So as and when you talk about it as an investment, it's an investment in yourself, but also my years traveling and working and volunteering made me more resilient. It have helped me face challenges and problems that you have to overcome. You gain confidence in yourself. You develop a more global perspective, which is of course of great importance in today's world. So now when I talk to graduates on the night of commencement, I do hear more deciding to take a gap year, and I feel a little bit validated all these years later, that caregivers and guidance counselors are seeing the value of a gap year and getting out and traveling the world, going to school, volunteering, are an investment that will pay off for a lifetime and will open many more doors to a wide variety of opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
Yeah.
you can't. I was recently at even the ROM, the Royal Ontario Museum, and I was looking at some of the artifacts, and they have from all over the world, and I was seeing them in these cases, and I felt sad for a moment that you can't see them in their original place, like and it's beautiful because it's a mini classroom and I saw a lot of students and a lot of teachers around, but there really is nothing like visiting a place in person and building that connection physically. I do really believe that there's a difference in being able to feel it and experience it real life.
Hmm.
And so I love that we're continuing to encourage people to explore the world and get out there and see and make friends, make connections because that's what really matters, I think, in life.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if anyone has any questions in the chat. Feel free to throw them out there. Otherwise, I will pull up this quote that you actually have, Adam, because I know it's something that we were going to share. So, yeah, but if anyone has a question, feel free to throw it for Adam. Let me just pull this up because I think this will be a beautiful way to end today's Travel Matters webinar. Can you share a little bit about this quote, Adam, and why you chose it to
Oh
be?
yeah, yeah. This is kind of our our guiding light in geography classrooms is this quote: "What is where, why there, and why care?" When I think about our classrooms today, we want to be asking more questions about our world. When you ask questions, you're seeking out answers to those, and this is really a quote that helps us inquire more about the world around us. And really, it should inspire a desire to want to learn more about the world and make sense of the world at a time when, like, a lot of things don't make sense, especially for
Mhm.
some young people. And that's what this quote really is about. Is like, first of all, like, just like, what is it? Where is it? Those are the easy questions. But then we start to ask, why is it there? And the most important part of this is, why should we care about these things, and nurturing um, that empathy for other places in the world, the things that we've already talked about. I think that is encapsulated in this quote. So that kind of is our guiding light in geography to keep students asking questions and inquiring about the world around them.
Yeah, and not just in geography. I think it should
Yeah,
be in life. I think, always asking, where are we? Why are we here? And yeah, how should we care is an important thing to do anywhere we step foot in, no matter where we're
yeah,
visiting. It should be a way of life. So thank you so much for inspiring me, Adam, over the years and inspiring so many generations of people. I am positive that you have no idea how many people you've impacted through your stories and um, just ability to connect us deeper with our education and to continue to be a lifelong learner will be all of our journeys because you inspired that in the classroom. So thank you so much for being here as well and collaborating with my travel, matters series. It was so cool to be able to have you on today's episode, and I look forward to hearing all of your family's travel stories moving forward. I know it's not the last one, so look forward to a dinner with you and hear about where you went next. Where's on the docket? I know you gave me a little bit of a hint a trip you have planned. So can you
Yes.
tell everyone?
Well, I mean, I always have a lot going on in terms of the big ideas
Right.
are I love traveling overland. I think that's why I do love bike travel. So,
Mhm.
um, definitely top of North America to the bottom of South America would be something I would love to achieve in some way. Probably not
Mhm.
cycling it fully, but cycling parts of that. And the same as the top of Europe to Cape Town, South Africa. Both those are ones that I would love to achieve. I'm not getting any younger, so I have to start thinking of these
Very
uh,
soon.
these things,
Yeah.
big adventures soon. So definitely, those are two that I've got swirling around in my brain right
Oh, incredible. Well,
now.
I can't wait to hear where you actually end up and appreciate you taking the time today to meet with us. I know it's a busy time of the year with report cards and
Yeah. Yes.
everything. It means the world to us that you joined us, and we look forward to staying in touch.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Adam. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye,
Yeah.
everyone. Thanks for joining.